Welcome to Where's Wilmington. I'm Lisa Capalla. You are watching Where's Wilmington, even though this is Red Sox Weekly. Rick Aronofsky to my right here. We are going to be talking about fantasy sports, specifically, or well, we'll see, but mostly about fantasy football, because I don't know if you've noticed, but everybody is talking about fantasy football. So we're going to tackle fantasy football and understanding fantasy sports and really what is all the fuss about. So Rick, you're my expert guest. I'm so glad you're here. I mean, I know fantasy football about 5 years ago. I think I started seeing people in bars, guys mostly, with big charts and picking out teams. And then it just seems like in the last year or two, it's really exploded.
It's taken off.
Yeah. So can you talk to us a little bit about the history first?
Yeah. First of all, thanks for inviting me on the program once again. It's always a pleasure to be on your show. So history of fantasy leagues, I guess. It all started basically with rotisserie baseball, okay? So think of a guy and his buddies sitting at a bar, like you just said, or sitting around a table at home drinking, and they pick out their lineup, and they say, gee, I've got a lineup of, let's say, New York Yankees, and it could be a mixed lineup of Yankees, Red Sox, or it could be football lineup. And my lineup's going to beat your lineup. Okay, so we're going to keep track of how many touchdowns they score, how many home runs they hit, how many goals they score, and we're going to assign a point value to that.
Okay.
At the end of the year, we're going to see who wins.
That sounds really simple, but I know it's not.
It's not. So what they did is they would pool some money. They would say, okay, now my team is worth $100. I'm going to bet my $100 to your team $100, and at the end of the year, whoever has the most points gets the pot, okay?
Okay.
So it was actually invented by a guy named Dan. I think it's Dan Okrent, who lives on Cape Cod. Okay.
Which is kind of cool.
Which is kind of cool, right?
Right.
And it's kind of morphed into this big, huge industry right now, which most people know as DraftKings or FanDuel.
Right. So is this sort of like when you were young guys and you would say, well, will Superman kill the Hulk in a battle?
Exactly right.
It's kind of like that?
Yeah, it's pitting one guy or one team against another team. And, you know, guys, they're very competitive. I mean, you grew up with a brother and you had guys, cousins in your family. Very competitive. So you're always one-upping one another. So my team's stronger than your team. And at the end...
Okay, so here's another thought I had about this. Is fantasy football mostly for guys who don't play sports?
No, not at all. No,
because why wouldn't you just go play the game rather than spend hours and hours researching all of this stuff? Because the work to pick your team, which we're going to talk about later, is a tremendous amount of research.
Right. You got to think of fantasy football as a way to bet money or contribute money and follow your teams. And it may not necessarily be your single team. It could be a combination of teams. So you're drafting players from other teams. But just, you know, following that entire season and see how you do. Now, fantasy football, or fantasy leagues originally was a year-long commitment, okay? So think of Yahoo, okay? The internet Yahoo. Yahoo had fantasy sports long before DraftKings and FanDuel.
Because I was doing a little research and they said that there's actually a fantasy league for just about every single sport, any sport you would want to.
And Yahoo was a big one, okay? But what you had to do is you had to commit for that entire season, okay? So and you had to wait from the beginning to the end of the season to have your winnings sent to you.
Okay.
So who wants to do that today? Today we are an instantaneous... Instant gratification, right? So then that begat FanDuel and DraftKings.
So they're shorter commitment levels.
Very short. It could be a day. You know, it could be an hour. You know, it could be a half a day. So you set your rosters for that particular time period, and you can get paid on those results the following day.
Okay. Why is this fun for you?
Well,
I can hear my crew laughing.
I know.
This just seems like a lot of work to me.
You know what? I think every sports fan, whether it be a woman or whether it be a man, would like to be his or her own general manager. they like to put their own team together. Okay? And it's that little competition, like I'm smarter than the next guy. And like you said at the beginning of the program, Superman's better than Thor.
Right.
Exactly. So it's the fun of it is to see if you can put together a roster that can beat the next guy's roster.
Okay. And there are a lot of variables. It's not just the athleticism. Today, with the things that happen in the media, mistakes these players make, they can be removed. So it's not always the best player.
Right.
You've got to know if he has an earache in Cincinnati at a game, maybe in 2 weeks. It's like the butterfly effect, right?
Yeah, there's a whole algorithm involved where you have to really do your homework in order to succeed, I think, okay? It's like anything, right, you do in life, right? The more you put into it, the more you're going to get out of it. So you asked me at the top of the program if I played. All right. So in order to do research for the show, I said, yeah, I'm going to set up an account.
Thank you so much for doing that.
Right. So I'm going to set up an account. Now, I consider myself pretty knowledgeable in a lot of the sports.
Right.
But I don't get into that nitty gritty. I don't get into like, does this player do better against this defensive player? Does this offensive
Because
team?
that's what I don't understand, the actual doingness of it. Okay, I like these 5 guys for whatever 5 slots I have available.
Right.
But then how do they calculate how that fantasy team wins? Because each team is playing different games.
So
if your guy isn't playing that weekend,
Right.
your guy that's a defensive guy in your slots isn't playing, how do you calculate that week who wins?
Well, that's why you set your rosters on a daily basis. Okay, so when you're setting your rosters, you're saying, okay, you have so many offensive players to pick from, so many defensive, and we'll talk football now. Offensive players, defensive players, and a kicker. Okay?
Right.
And each player is assigned a value. Okay? So you have $60,000 as part of your pool of money. So now you have to draft these players based on their value. And their values are set based on what they can do defensively, what they can do offensively. So you pick and choose. So now you say, okay, who's the number 1 quarterback today? Tom Brady. Everybody can pick Tom Brady for their roster.
Okay.
So it's multiple. So now Brady may be worth $10,000. So now you only have $50,000 left. So now you go to the next guy, who's the wide receiver. Or you want to go to Gronk, tight end. You want to go to Gronk. He may be worth $8,000.
Okay, this is sounding kind of fun now.
So
you
now,
get to pick all
so
your
now
people.
You
It's
get
kind of like Monopoly. You buy all your houses and put all your guys in place. So who determines the value? Is it FanDuel?
It's FanDuel and DraftKings.
And they all have agreements with the NFL and
the only one that they have, let's say they have agreements with most of the pro leagues. Okay, but there are certain type of agreements. So let's say FanDuel does have an agreement, I believe, or is it the other way around? Okay, FanDuel doesn't have a licensing deal with the NFL Players Association.
Okay.
Whereas DraftKings does. So now what does that do for those players?
Right.
All right, so the one that doesn't have the licensing agreement, those players, their images are being used on their website.
I saw that somebody is suing about likenesses now.
Exactly, right.
But if you agree when you sign up, don't you, as a pro, that you let them pretty much own you?
Well,
really?
You would think that, yeah.
I mean, there must be a little fine print clause that says we can take
you work
your
for the
image
NFL, right? But you got to remember, these fantasy leagues are not run by the NFL.
Right, but they must be getting a piece somewhere.
Well, what happens
Or actually,
is,
it increases the watchability of the game, so they get it on the back end.
Exactly.
Okay.
So, but what the NFL has done, specifically Bob Kraft, he has invested some of his money into DraftKings.
Of course.
Right. So he's invested like $300 million. I mean, just in put it into DraftKings, okay? And so now that's why you see on a lot of the NFL stadiums, big DraftKings banners.
Right.
And now DraftKings, they weren't the number one. FanDuel was number one. But what DraftKings did is they generated a lot of seed money. They got a lot of seed money from investors. And they poured that money back into advertising. They spent it all on advertising. They didn't spend it on the actual tool to use it. They brought it all back into
Right.
advertising. So now they're plastered all over the place.
But is
So-
that a good thing? Because if they're not as intuitive, and that's what I want to ask you about in the
Right.
next segment, how intuitive is this? Because I've seen on YouTube how to pick your roster.
Right.
There's a million
Right.
different videos. There's even packages that you can buy for money that will teach you
Exactly.
how to pick the winning team,
It has spawned
So-
other cottage industries.
which is kind of interesting.
Okay, very interesting, because what happens is, so let's say you're a player, okay, and you've done pretty well, playing DraftKings or FanDuel. Well, I'm sort of an expert now. So now I'm going to farm out my talents to somebody else and say,
Right.
okay, I'm going to post a lineup today, folks. It's going to be the best lineup that you pay me for that lineup.
Well, isn't this like a guy giving tips at the horse track?
Exactly. It's
Same
like
thing.
that, or it's the 800 numbers for the bettors that, you'd say, okay, I've got the lock of the day, right? Okay.
So this is why we've seen in the news that Vegas and other places are saying they want their piece of the action now too.
Vegas wants their piece of the action, but it's illegal in Vegas to use DraftKings or FanDuel. And the reason it's illegal is Vegas views it as a gambling site.
Well, I think that's what it is.
It's funny you ask, okay?
Because
I've asked that
I've
question.
read all the materials, and it seems like gambling
It seems
to me.
it is. My nephew plays it, and I asked him about this. I said, Nikki, is DraftKings and FanDuel a gambling site? Is it a game of skill, or is it a game of
I think it's
chance?
a combination, but that you
Right.
win something makes it gambling to me. If
Well-
it were skills for just fun and you got a blue ribbon,
Right.
that's different. When money is involved, real actual cash, I
Yeah.
think that's where we have to draw the line.
Well, I think what happens is, the way they're looking at it is, you have that skill of picking the players, the correct players. There's the skill involved.
Right.
The chance that you're talking about is the chance of that player. You're betting on that player to perform
Anything
like you're
can
supposed to do, right?
happen.
Exactly. So I agree with you. It's both.
Mm-hmm.
Now, some of the states have said, we think it's, a game of chance. Some of the states have said we think it's.
Well, they're going to say whatever makes their pockets lined more
Right.
for the community. That's,
Exactly right. So
Let me stop you right there.
go ahead.
We're going to take our midpoint
Yeah.
break here. It's a fascinating
Yeah,
topic.
it's crazy.
Really. We're going to be back in a minute with more about fantasy sports, fantasy football. Specifically, we're kind of talking about that. And I want to actually ask Rick about strategy. How does one pick out these winning teams? And how do you collect your winnings? And how does all of that work? So we'll talk a little bit more with Rick Aronofsky of Red Sox Weekly right after this. Welcome back to Where's Wilmington? I'm Lisa Capalla. We are talking about fantasy sports, primarily fantasy football, because that seems to be the one that's in the news so much right now. I was thinking about the guys who originally created this, the Rotisserie League, and they were in a restaurant in New York City, I guess.
Sure, right.
And they were hanging out. This was before the internet.
this was before.
So
the
you got to
internet.
think about
Right,
that.
right.
We have the luxury of clicking on and going
Sure.
in, and they actually did all that research without the internet.
Exactly right.
That is pretty amazing. And there's a movie about those guys coming out too. And I
Yeah.
guess none of them have made any money.
Right.
Or did, and isn't that usually the way with
Yep.
how these things
Sure.
start?
I mean, it's like anything that just snowballs to a great idea. The guys who originally thought of it,
Right.
they get nothing, and the guys who latched onto it and kind of enhanced it reap the benefits.
Right.
Of it. Right. Exactly.
That's life.
Yeah.
What can you
I mean,
do?
the internet had a lot to do with the explosion of fantasy football, obviously, or fantasy sports, because that it was instantaneous. You could grab your information. You could do your e-commerce. You could deposit your money, so to speak, into the account. Now, if you remember correctly, Lisa, online gambling, online poker was huge.
Right.
Okay, and it was shut down because a lot of the sites were offshore, and the powers to be said, we're going to shut it down because it is illegal gambling. And that's what kind of spawned this act to differentiate between whether it's a game of skill or a game of chance and whether it's gambling or not gambling.
Right, and you use your credit card to make the payments, and
Exactly.
which I want to ask you about that. So there's always a fee to play?
No, some of them are free.
Okay.
Okay, but you have to have a pool of money to start. They when they advertise, and it's kind of
Right,
like
because I'm
false
like,
advertising.
how is this
Exactly.
working?
It's
Because
kinda like
the
false
commercials,
advertising,
everyone's
yeah.
excited,
Free play,
$1 million winner, and
use
it's
my
like,
coupon, use my Lisa code. Okay,
Yeah,
type
yeah,
in Lisa
yeah.
as the code,
Yeah.
and you have a free play. Well, that's sort of correct. Okay, you can type in that free code, but you have to deposit money.
and how much money are we talking about
It
here?
could be as little as $5 or $10.
Okay. So what about the scandal recently with the guys that were doing what they're calling insider trading?
Sure,
They
right.
worked for the company. They knew what information was coming in from the other teams.
Right.
What's your take on that?
Well, I think, my take is I definitely think it needs to be regulated. Okay, I think both sites need to be regulated. The whole industry needs to be regulated. Whether or not that guy had inside information, supposedly, he had all the algorithms and all the I guess smarts to see that as it was posted.
I'm not so sure about that.
I'm not too sure
I mean,
either.
you're working there all day long, doing
Right.
data entry, seeing what's going on,
Right.
and then you go home and play the game. I don't know.
No,
And it's
he
not like a
definitely-
video
He
game.
definitely played the game. He definitely entered, a roster on the competitive site. But I think he had the inside edge only because he worked for DraftKings and he knew how points in strengths were being, I guess, not manipulated, but gathered.
Right,
Okay.
right.
He knew he wouldn't be working there if he
Right,
didn't.
which is
exactly
what is kind of interesting
right.
about
So,
that.
but he won $350,000.
That's what I want to ask you about too, because of course the commercials show you guys, the average Joes, they look like
Right.
winning millions.
Right.
Is that really?
Doesn't happen. I don't think it happens. I mean,
Really?
I think there may be one guy who may reap the benefit. You got to remember.
Because how does that happen? How does that work? Everybody puts the money into the pool that's
Exactly.
playing in this league that you're
Exactly.
in.
Right.
And then who
There's a
determines the winner?
when you go
How is that?
well when you go into it's based on points.
Okay.
Okay, so it may be the top 100 players get money, but you may have, let's say, 2,000 entrants. So
Right.
the other ones get nothing.
Okay.
But
So is it kind of like March Madness? You go and go and go and go until you get to the pyramid, and then there's the last two guys that have maybe the five best players
exactly
each?
the top 10 players, and,
Okay.
and going into the contest, you know how much money you're going to win if you are in first place or if you're in second place.
Do you think people could make a job out of this, a living out of
They
doing
can
it?
make a living out of it. And like I said earlier, this cottage industry of, let's say you are playing, okay, and you're pretty successful at it, and you want to sell your expertise, okay? So you go on Twitter and you say, okay, I'm posting, and they don't say guaranteed.
Right.
They don't, they can't say
you
that.
can't.
They can't. So I'm going to post a lineup tonight. That's a hot lineup.
Well, it's your opinion, so there's no
Exactly.
copyright on your opinion,
And it's
so
gonna
you're safe
and it's
there.
going to cost you $10. So somebody buys that lineup for $10. Now that's one lineup.
Right.
Then he has another tier. He says, okay, now I'm going to sell you 10 lineups for $20. And then I'm going to sell you a whole season's worth of lineups for $150. Okay, so there's that cottage industry of this guy who now used to play.
And he can also play on his own too, so
certainly
he
can
can
play on
make
his
money
own.
on his own account
Exactly.
and show you his results. And then he can say, buy
Right.
my stuff because
Right.
I'm the pro.
Right. All these YouTube videos where guys could talk, and I'm going to give you my top 5 strengths today. My top 5 players, but you have to pay me money for that.
Don't you find it fascinating that all this research, men can remember all the players' stats, but they can't remember anniversaries and birthdays of their wives?
No comment.
Don't you think that's fascinating?
No comment.
That you actually have that skill to know this guy
Right,
played and
right.
hid
Well,
and did all these things?
I don't think it all. Look at this. This is what my nephew's probably doing tonight. He probably has like 10 pages here.
Right.
And he's researching. I asked him. I said, Nikki, how long does it take you, to play fantasy sports? He says, well, I usually prep for about 2 hours
A day?
a day. I look 2 hours a day online.
But he enjoys it. It's
he
fun.
enjoys
he
it,
likes
and And,
I mean, there are some skills to it. There's math involved, and there's,
Right.
checking all the different blogs and reading everybody's
Exactly.
opinion.
Right.
So I guess,
There's-
it
there's
is
a little skill.
educational, we'll
Right.
say.
Right.
Do you think it's going to become something people are addicted to? Do you think people already are? Or do you think it's going to be dangerous? Like they always have the gambling.
Right.
When you go to a casino, it
I
says
think it's going to be a house of
if
cards.
you have a problem,
I think it's going to be a
blah.
house of cards. I think eventually one of the two is going to fold, or
Really?
they'll come together. Okay. It depends on what the government does, how they regulate it.
Right, because it's state by state now.
It's
Is it
state
ever
by
going to
state.
be our whole country's going to take
Exactly.
an opinion on this?
Right.
What do
So
you think?
I think the whole country is going to. Once people start losing and losing big, then you'll start hearing the complaints, or they don't get paid. Let's say, and luckily there's only two big ones.
Right.
There are some smaller ones out there, but let's say you've invested, $150 or $200 of your hard-earned money, and you win, but you don't get paid.
That's not good.
That's not
Well, then
good.
they'll go to the business agencies and it will get out eventually.
Exactly, it'll
and
get
that
out
will
eventually.
ruin the
Right,
industry.
right.
All right, so let me ask you some of your wisdom on strategy for how to do this.
All right,
And we won't
so-
guarantee
so
that
as
Rick's
a-
picks
so
are
as-
the
no, no,
winning ones.
So as I
How do you
stated,
do it?
as I stated at the beginning of the show, to do research for
Yes.
your program, I signed up, and I wanted to see how easy it was.
Right, because is it,
for me to sign up and how long it would take me. It took me 10 minutes, not
Really?
even 10 minutes to get up there, get my password, my username, give them my credit card, okay, and then start playing. All right. So
Now, what does that look like when you're playing? You're just picking people.
that's all you're doing.
So how is that playing?
You have probably 50 different contests to choose from.
Oh.
Different types. It could be top 50. It could be in different.
Can they also ask you to determine who's the best in their particular field, like the best kicker, the best place
Well,
kicker,
it's
or
not
the best
not
this
the
or the best
best.
that?
It's not the best because you're picking from a roster.
Okay.
Okay, so and you can in multiple players or multiple. I want to use players, but I'm a player. Okay.
Right.
You can have the same player as another
Right,
player. Okay.
right.
So it's not like if I took Tom Brady, nobody else can take Tom Brady. Okay.
Right. Well, that's what makes it fantasy.
Exactly. Right.
'Cause there's only one
so,
Tom.
So I don't have any strategy, Lisa, right now because I haven't been
No
playing.
strategy.
So what I did is I just took, I looked at some of the comments. If you look at the rosters when you go into log in and look at the players, there's a little box there.
Mm-hmm.
Click on the box and you'll see the comments. And it's based on his past performance, maybe the past 5 performances, whether he scored 20 goals versus 5 goals, whether
Right.
he's hot, whether he's not hot, whether he's hurt, whether he's even going to be playing. Okay, so you take that into consideration, and then you say, okay, now they're playing against this team this week.
Right.
So let's say the Patriots are playing against Miami. How have they done against Miami? How do you think they're going to do against Miami if you're picking a Patriots player?
Right.
So last night, for instance, I played a hockey tournament.
Okay.
So my first try was a football tournament. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And out of the top 100, okay, I think it was the top 50 get paid. All right.
Okay.
So I came in 77th.
That's not bad for a first try.
So first try, all right. But I didn't put any thought into it. I just
Right,
picked.
you were just
I just
trying
picked
it
my
out for fun.
rosters and okay, that looks good. Well, last night I played hockey, all right, and who the Bruins play was Tyler Seguin. Okay. Now Tyler Seguin, I know, used to play for the Bruins. I know there were a lot of Bruins fans that were upset that they traded him, okay, because he was a goal scorer, and the Bruins didn't have any goal scorers at the time. So I had the opportunity of choosing Tyler Seguin as my
That's
on
kind of
my
neat.
roster, right? And I'm saying, he's coming back to Boston. He's going to be playing in Boston.
So I'm seeing where this could be fun because there's actual a live, real outcome. You pick,
Exactly,
then you have
right.
to watch the game, which is
Right,
great for the
exactly.
advertisers too.
Right, so
Advertisers know you're going to be
you're gonna be
married to
watching.
watching that game because
Exactly.
you're involved. So I can see how that would be a win-win for those
But
companies.
Lisa, I didn't pick Tyler.
You didn't.
I did not pick
Why
Tyler.
not?
Okay.
Strategy.
I didn't pick him because I didn't think he was going to do well coming home to
Okay.
Boston. Okay. He scored 3 goals last night.
That's good, right?
So that's good. So he would have given me so many points for all those goals.
Oh, no.
Okay. So my roster didn't do very well again last night, and so far I've invested $10.
All right.
I have
So your ego's a little bruised. You've only spent
$2.50 left in my kitty.
Not too bad.
Right.
Do they ever give bonus or give
They
you
do.
guys money to kind of keep you in the...
That's exactly right.
So it sounds like gambling to me.
Right. They
It
do.
just
They have a
does.
bonus that they give you, and it's a pending bonus. And then if you refer your friends, okay, so if I'm going to refer
man.
Jimmy Buckley, refer Jimmy, come on into this league, that's another $10 that they're going to give me to gamble with. Okay, so they got you
I don't
hooked.
know.
They got you hooked.
What do you think the government's going to do about this? I know you said they're going to regulate, but I
Right.
mean, there's got to be tax ramifications here
Well,
that are
when I-
looming. When
when
you
I-
win,
when
that's
I-
winnings.
right.
So you must have to pay tax on
When
that.
I signed up, I had to give them my social security number, which I didn't like. Okay.
Now that's kind of frightening
It's
because
very
that
frightening because it's up on the
identity
net.
theft.
Exactly, it's identity.
No, I'm thinking someone could use
Exactly,
your
right,
information for gambling,
Do
and
you think I
that
used my?
probably
Do
wouldn't
you
be
think
good.
I used my right one?
I don't know. How many do you have?
I just picked one. Lisa.
You heard it here
I
first.
just
This is
picked one.
taped. You're going to be in trouble.
I just picked one.
Which of the sites do you like better, just for your own?
You know what? I've only
did you
gone
look
on
at them both?
FanDuel. I haven't tried DraftKings yet. So
Okay.
DraftKings, I guess, DraftKings in their football pool,
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to pick a kicker, and FanDuel, you have to pick a kicker as part of your roster.
Okay.
So there's a little strategy there too, because let's say you pick a kicker like Gostkowski for the Patriots. You know he's bona fide. You know he's going to put up the point after all the time. So and he would be a good one to pick
Right.
because the Patriots are averaging 32 points a game. So you know Steve Gostkowski is going to kick a point after every single touchdown. So he's going to get a lot of points, which will give
So
you
that's kind of a given.
which
That would
will
be
give
an
you a
easy
lot of
choice.
that would be an easy choice. Right,
Yeah.
right.
Well, I would imagine the first few picks you make are kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah,
But
you-
when you get down to those last few
Yeah,
slots,
like yeah,
it's just like when you watch it on TV when they're picking the people. They're
Right,
like, who's
right.
left in
well,
the
yeah, the
bunch of
the whole
apples,
strategy
you know?
is picking your top tier.
Right.
Okay, the guys you know are going to perform, and then you're down to that $12,000 of roster. Now, who do I pick? Who's going to be a sleeper?
Right.
Who do I think is going to be a sleeper who may come out and perform this?
I
tonight?
kind of like that you said it's similar to actually getting to be a team manager, because there's got to be some fun in that.
Right.
Because I know when you guys watch the drafts, is that what you call it,
Right,
the draft picks?
right, mhm.
I know when you guys watch that, you're all like, oh, who's going to get
Right.
my guys? So this kind of gives you control. The only thing that seems kind of strange to me is that everybody can get the best guys. That's nice, but
Yeah,
it's not,
well,
it's kind
it's-
of odd to me. But
well,
how else would you do it?
how else would
the
you do it?
first
Be-
person that comes would get the
Exactly.
There's
right?
no way
and
to
you got to
control
remember
that.
that these leagues right now are daily leagues. They're not year-long leagues. Okay, so and there are many contests that you can enter. You know, there may be 100 that you can choose from, different types of contests, each with a different type
Wow.
of payout. Now, what's interesting is Vegas, they outlawed it. Okay. Until they get a license, because they do not allow gambling unless you have a gambling license, and they consider this as a form of gambling. Well, what DraftKings and what FanDuel had prior to Nevada saying, you can't do business in our state, is they had lined up their huge events to happen in Vegas, their $1 million event. So somebody was going to win $1 million at the end of the year, and they were going to have this huge party and this event. Now they have to move it somewhere other than Vegas.
Ohio.
Right, exactly.
I mean, where are you
Wilmington,
gonna-
yeah,
where
exactly.
are you gonna-
exactly.
Wow.
So they had.
Well,
they had to
Vegas
do
is
some
going to
drill.
lose out. That was a big moneymaker. I know
Yeah.
Vegas has got a lot
Right,
of money
exactly,
anyway, but
right,
wow,
right.
that's
Yeah,
not good.
so-
And there are other states that have made changes too.
Yes, yeah. There's
What's
probably
going on?
well,
Here, we're open to it right now?
We're open to it right now. Maura Healey is looking at it. My guess is they're just going to let it continue. I mean, they've got the lottery, the most successful lottery in
Right.
the United States. I think they will let it continue, and they'll watch to see if people start complaining or people start saying I'm losing money or I'm not being paid. That's the whole thing.
Right.
If people are not going to get paid on their winnings, then they'll come in and they'll
But have
sue
you
them.
heard complaints of that?
I have not as of yet.
Okay, so
Right.
if that's not happening,
Right.
then if everybody's happy, I guess it's okay.
Well, you know what?
For now.
I'm looking at some of the payouts of these sites.
Right.
And if you're happy with $2 payouts, $5 payouts, $10 payouts, you know.
But isn't it all supposed to be just for fun
It's
anyway?
supposed to be
Isn't
for
it bragging
fun.
rights, really? So
Right.
you can say to your other friends, hey,
Right,
my team is
Exactly.
number one.
My nephew, I mean, he won $2,000 the other night on
Okay,
a
that's
$2
good.
bet, and for him that was good. You know,
Right.
that's enough for him to keep on going.
Well, that's reward. That's personal achievement.
Exactly right.
So maybe for some people it's not about
And
the
I
money.
said to him, I said, Nicky, I said, okay, now you've won the 2,000. On your next one, if you win 2,000, would you consider selling your picks, selling your rosters? He says, you know, I never thought of that.
I don't know if I would want to open myself up to that, because the criticism you might get from people
Well,
if it's not.
if you're not,
you know.
successful and your picks don't win,
Right, but
it's going to
everybody
get out
only
there.
has
Social
long
media is
of a-
going to,
You know, you only can pick
exactly.
the winners for so long,
Right.
and
But
I mean, it's
but
just the
what-
law of averages.
but
You're bound
Lisa,
to make a mistake
but,
eventually.
Lisa, what would happen? Let's say this guy, and I follow this guy on Twitter, who does this. He sells his rosters. So, what is to prevent him from? Let's say he's not doing a good job,
Mm-hmm.
and then people on social media are ranking on him, and the
Right.
word's out. What's to prevent him from closing up shop, but opening up as another person?
Correct.
Okay, so he could just continue on and say, I'm, ABC 123. Here's my roster. Now, I'm not doing well. I'm going to shut that down. I'm now, XYZ. He's going to just continue on. And
Well,
sell
I
us.
mean, also too, sometimes people look at the negative press and they say, hey, maybe I should check this guy out, and that.
Right.
You know, that can give you a
Yeah.
boost too. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what all shakes out. But I think it's fascinating that we picked doing this show about a month ago. We
Right,
set this
yeah,
up.
oh, yeah. And
And then
it's-
everything just started
Yeah.
to mushroom
Every
into
single day,
craziness since.
there's a story in online or in a newspaper about either one of these two companies. And what's interesting is FanDuel versus DraftKings. DraftKings is based in Massachusetts. FanDuel is based in New York.
Right.
So you have that natural rivalry between Boston
The
and New York.
Yankees and the Red
Exactly,
Sox.
exactly. So, and the guy who started DraftKings, he wants to keep it in Massachusetts. He's been approached by people to move it to California, where Google is, okay, where Yahoo
It's
is.
a natural
where-
progression.
Exactly, where Facebook is. It's a natural progression. But he wants to keep it in Massachusetts so that he can prove to people that these type of startups can be very successful in the state of Massachusetts rather than moving it, to the state of
Right.
California.
I mean, movement isn't always the answer.
It's not,
Right.
right, exactly, right.
Well, thank you so much, Rick, for
I hope
educating
I
me
hope I
about all
educated
this
you.
stuff.
I know you're not going to run out and start a fantasy league of your own, or even join one of these.
I'm going to
but-
become a blogger, and I'm just going to randomly pick stuff,
Right,
and if
yeah.
it wins, I'm
Whoever
going
wins,
to
exactly,
collect
right.
all my
And I-
winnings.
and I'll-
no,
I'll
I
be
don't.
the first to
I won't
let
do
you know
that
if I win.
because to me, that's just a lot of time. But I can see where it could be fun.
It is a lot of.
You
It is a
know,
lot
and
of time.
I could
yeah.
see where it would make you, as the user or the player,
Right.
feel a power that you might not have. I know it's frustrating. My family are sports freaks. I did not
Yep.
get that gene. But when they watch the game, it's very frustrating to them when people don't perform the way they would like. So
Sure.
maybe this is an outlet for that anger. If you pick your own roster
Right.
and you've got say over who's who, and it's a
Right.
dream team, and you're happy. Maybe that would eliminate some of that feeling of
I don't know.
powerlessness, because
All
you
I
do
know is
feel powerless.
On Sundays, I like to watch football, but I just like to watch football.
Right.
I don't. To me, this is not going to. Me personally.
See, I worry that it's part of a multitasking generation.
Right,
I worry
yeah.
that we're not going to just watch the game. We're going to have our iPad on, and
Oh,
we're going
they
to be
do.
calculating,
No,
and we're going to be
well,
saying,
no,
"Oh my God, how does that affect my roster?"
Well,
and
you have your
where's
cell
the
phone.
pureness of the
Right.
game?
Yeah, you have
That's
your cell
what
phone
worries me.
or your iPad, and instantaneously you can see the results pop up on the screen.
Right.
So what.
See, for me, shut off the FanDuel stuff
Exactly,
during the
right,
game.
right.
Know your roster that you've picked, and then go back after the game and check and
Well,
see
I
how you
did-
did. But no one's going to do that.
Today I wanted, I played last night, okay, and first thing I did
Do
this
we need
morning.
to call someone for
First
you?
thing I did this morning was check to see how I did.
You're addicted. That's it.
No.
There's going to be
I
now.
can't.
There's going to be like anonymous FanDuel
right.
anonymous for people to go to.
It's
soon.
to me it's a lot of work.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're into it and you've got the free time,
Right. Yeah, it's
Great.
not me.
all right. Anything final we should tell our viewers? I hope everybody enjoyed the show. I thought it was fascinating.
Yeah,
I
it's
learned a lot.
fun. Yeah,
Okay,
thanks
great.
for having me.
You're welcome.
Yep.
Well, that was our show. We talked about fantasy sports. I hope you enjoyed it. Just thanking Rick Aronofsky for being here today and reminding you that the next time somebody asks you where's Wilmington, you tell them right here and right here on WCTV. We'll see you next time.